Good morning, board members. I'm Jessica Bean with the Division of Water Rights. I'm going to give you a brief update on the current hydrologic conditions and response today. If we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so taking a look at precipitation for the water year, this is as of January 4th. You can see on this map pretty clearly that the bluer colors kind of up in the north shows a lot more precipitation, very anomalously wet up north. And as you move down south, you get less and less precipitation and really relatively no precipitation down south. And so this is what we're seeing. We're looking at 115% of average for the state, but we are still relatively early in the water year. If we could go to the next slide, please. We can dig into this a little bit more when we look at the Sierra precipitation indexes. So this is the Northern Index, and if you take a look, I apologize, it's a little busy. There's a lot of water years on this, but the dark blue line is what we're looking at. And right now we're looking at 134% of average in the Northern Sierra. Next slide, please. And then that jumps down pretty quickly to only 71% of average when you move into the San Joaquin area. And then if you go to the next slide, please, really about the same, it's about 70% of average in the Tulare Basin area. So, again, we're actually seeing a record-breaking contrast between the wet north and the dry south right now. So this is pretty unusual to have this this type. Let's look at the snowpack next, please. Slide. So our snowpack is following a very similar trend here. So up top in the north, you have 156% of normal. That's 56% of the April 1st average. Again, that dark blue line is what we're looking at, and the light blue area is the average. And then if you go into the central area, your percent of normal goes to 92%, down to 70% when you go into the southern area. And then again, really looking at about 106% of normal for the state. So we'll have to keep an eye on this and see what happens the closer we get to April 1st. All right, next slide, please. I'm going to shift slightly and just talk about temperature trends for a moment. So it's been unusually warm for most of California for about the past 3 months. That's what you're seeing here. So the redder colors are more above average temperatures. There are some pockets of very cool areas, mainly in the northern mountains and some of the southern coastal areas. But this is, having these wet and dry conditions and then the warmer temperatures is having some interesting impacts on some of the weather systems. So if we can go to the next slide, please. We've seen quite a few thunderstorms and thunderstorm activities and tornadoes. So this is an image that was shared by Dr. Daniel Swain recently from let me get the name here so I can tell you, from Craig Heaton took this picture. It's about 11 miles away from the Tehama Shasta border, where they had a pretty big tornado out there. So looking at kind of continuing on this pattern, if we look at the next slide, please. I'm sure folks have been hearing a lot about the wind storms that we're seeing down south. And this is an image of the jet stream model. And what's particularly interesting here is those arrows on the lines here are pointing down. So you're seeing the wind really coming down. And that purple is extremely high. You can see where it's hitting right there. So that's why there is a wind advisory in effect today through Thursday. Also, probably a lot of, fire weather, because we've had a couple of wet seasons followed by a dry season, and now dry, warm, windy conditions. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on there. All right, if we can go to the next slide, please. Looking at our major water supply reservoirs here, most are at or above average at this point. Folsom is slightly below, and Millerton is about 82%, but the rest are right about average. And then our final slide today, please, is just to remind folks of the annual diversion and use reporting that are due by the 1st of February. Again, these are for diversions from the past water year, and we are at about 19% compliance right now when I checked with staff late last week. So again, really encouraging people to get those reports in. They're very important. And that's what I have for you today.